morning, everyone. Elias, can you unmute yourself?
Yes.
Okay. Wanted to make, just testing audio. Wanted to make sure you could hear me and vice versa. We will give it another minute or so. Give it a chance for more people to show up. Right now we're at 22 and we are recording. So we'll give it a couple more minutes and then I'll come back on and we'll probably get started, I don't know, in 2 or 3 minutes.
I got my earphones in, that's so it probably is me in there. Oh, they can hear me.
Okay. It's 10:03. We've got 27 participants. I think it's time we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to ask everyone that's not, unless you have a question or unless I specifically ask, I would just request that you mute yourself at this point, just so we don't have any background noise, etc. As I stated, we are recording, so that would help everyone, I think. This is going to be very informal. Let me begin at the beginning. Good morning. My name is Hearing Officer John Peskin. I'm going to be conducting this first of what is probably going to be many of these bar trainings. It's going to involve the e-filing system primarily, different types of applications, issues we're seeing with the system, etc. So it's going to be informal. I want this to be conversational at times. I will pause and ask people if they have questions. At that point, I think that would be the appropriate moment for people to unmute themselves, etc. I don't really have a moderator that's running this, so if people use the raise hand function and things like that, I might not see it. So let me see there. Oh yeah, there's already been a chat. So I'm trying to monitor those things as I go, but there's a lot of levers to push and pull here for one person. So anyway, with that being said, I want to give a brief outline what we're going to talk about this morning. We're going to basically do a run through of the different types of platforms that exist within the e-filing system, what they do, what they don't do, how they're different from one another. Then I'm going to very briefly run through an example of filing a pooling application. It's just going to be the external system that most people utilize. We're not going to get into an in-depth back and forth. We're actually going to save that for next week. We're going to have an example next week where the hearings unit participates as a team, and we show you what happens when an applicant files something, what we do on the inside, what happens if it's petitioned, how we route it through the different work queues, etc. So that's going to be for next week. And then I'm going to go through some of the questions that the that the bar was able to put together for me. We're not going to get to all of them today, but like I said, we're going to, for now, I think we'll do these once a week. And as I stated in my email, it'll just depend on demand, how often we do these. So all that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. Let me see. Yep, we're still recording. That's good. So first of all, I want to thank everybody for being here. As I stated in my email, I think it would be incredibly helpful for firms to have their support staff here if the support staff are going to be the most active users of the system in their firms. But I think it's still worthwhile for the attorneys to know exactly how this system works as well. And as I already stated more than once, this is being recorded, but the thing I do not know as of right this moment is exactly where it will be uploaded. If it'll be uploaded onto our hearings page or if it'll go to our YouTube page. I'm not sure how that will work. We'll take care of that. Somebody say something? Maybe by accident. Okay, anyway, as soon as I know where this is going to exist, when we upload the recording, I'll send out an email. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about are the 3 different platforms that were rolled out as part of what we generally refer to as the eFiling system. And as I stated, it will go over what they do, how they're different, and what they do and do not do. The 3 platforms are the Unity client, which that's the internal system. We'll talk about that more in just a second. The external access client, or EAC, and the public access viewer, or PAV. So the first one we'll talk about is the Unity client. That version is, and it's unlike the other 2, unlike the external access client and the public access viewer, it's software that's actually installed on our computers, on internal staff's computers. It requires users to register and log in. It's basically the inside-facing version of the e-filing system, and it's utilized by COGCC staff, meaning the hearing officers and technical staff primarily. It is by far the most robust component of the e-filing system because it contains all of the tools that we utilize to move the dockets between work groups. So it's one that external users will not have access to, and I will next week, when we get into how the applications move from being filed by the applicant to what we do to it on the inside, we will demonstrate what the Unity client looks like, how it functions, what the tools are, etc. All right, up next is the external access client, or EAC. Let me show you briefly. You should see my the home page of the COGCC, and Elias, I'm going to keep picking on you, so I only have one point of contact. Can you see our home page?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Elias. So how do you get to the EAC? For those of you who don't know, you go to regulation and then hearings in this blue bar, and then over on this vertical panel over here on the right-hand side, I understand it's not necessarily the best labeling that it exists under this title, operator tools, because more than just operators utilize the EAC, but we had to break it out between people who file things and people who just want to look at information, which is what exists up here. So under operator tools, it's this link right here that states application and docket portal. And then you click on that. Okay, so this is the EAC, the external access client. And this is web-based, obviously. And like the Unity client, it requires users to register and have a username and password to log in. This version of the e-filing system, basically, for lack of a better term, is utilized by the parties. And what I mean by that, the applicants, the petitioners, etc. So this is where applicants go to kick a matter off, to file an application, to upload necessary supporting documents. It's also where the petitioner goes to upload their petition. But I want to point this out, and this is something we've encountered recently, and we as the hearings unit have had these conversations with a few of you in attendance today. This, most importantly, is where all requests for relief must be filed. And what I mean by that is that if you want a continuance, file a motion in the EAC. If you want to dismiss your application, file a motion in the EAC. Requests for relief submitted via email will be done so without effect by the filer. And that is because we have in the past, with the advent of e-filing, we have tried to rectify issues we've had in the past regarding whether or not a communication from a party in an email was actually a request for relief or not. And that is something that we have tried to move away from, and to bring more formality to this, to our proceedings, but also to just make sure that there's more certainty and clarity. We want the record to be clear. We want the parties to understand, hey, a motion's been filed and the rules of civil procedure govern. So I've got 21 days to respond, etc. Go to the EAC, register, file your request for relief there. If you send an email to the hearing officer, it's not going to have any effect, with two notable exceptions. And one of those exceptions, at least eventually, is going to go away. So what are the two exceptions to asking for relief outside of the EAC? The first is going to be if the matter is older, meaning it did not originate in e-filing, it's got an old docket number, something from 2018 or 2019, and it has not yet been uploaded into the e-filing system. Obviously, if it doesn't exist in the e-filing system, you cannot request relief in that docket within the e-filing system. So that is one example of an exception to asking for relief via an email. But that is the one I was referring to that will obviously at some point no longer be applicable. The second exception is if the system is down, and there's going to need to be a reason in your email when you file it and say, as of, I'm just using this as an example, as of 10:13 a.m. on April 8th, the system was down. I could not upload my response to this motion for summary judgment. Here it is, hearing officer and other party. You've got to still, if the email communication becomes necessary and this is a contested matter, we still are governed by ex parte rules, and you're going to need to copy everyone on those communications. Obviously, we can't predict every single time our system's going to be down, but it's going to happen. It has happened. It will continue to happen. And that is something we can't foresee. So obviously, if that's the case, we'll accept something through e-filing under those circumstances. All right, I wanted to make that perfectly clear because we have run into that issue a few times already. Oh, and I forgot, you also need to copy the hearings assistant, Margaret Humecki, on those filings. If you're emailing a motion or a request, you need to copy the hearings assistant as well. Okay, so that's the external access client. We will walk through a very simplistic example of that in just a little bit. We're not going to get down into the weeds with that, but as I stated before, I'm back on our website here under regulation in the green bar, hearings in the blue bar, and then you scroll down here under operator tools. Even though it's not always an operator that's utilizing it, you click on this application and docket portal. By the way, it's also worth pointing out that these links under here, these e-filing guidebook supplement, FAQs, and how to use the e-filing system are all incredibly helpful and will continue to be updated as we evolve, which I think is worth discussing for 1 second when I talk about evolution. We know that this system has problems. We know that there are issues that pop up from time to time and that there are difficulties with that. This is I mean, we are in the early stages of using this. I anticipate, as do most of the people in the hearings unit, that we are going to continue to evolve this system over the next year, if not longer, just as we learn better ways to become more efficient with our processes. So this is not anything that's set in stone. We know we're going to hear things from you. We want to hear things from you as the primary users of this system, and we need to hear those things in order to improve it and to make it better for everyone, including us. We are constantly dealing with with OIT, the Office of Information and Technology, out of our attempts to make things better, and we'll talk about some of those things in a minute as well. Okay, next I want to move on to the public access viewer, or what we refer to as the PAV. Now, I want to show you how to find it again on our website. Regulation in the green bar, hearings in the blue bar, but this time it's this link right here. How to find, oh, sorry, no, document search. Sorry, it's this fourth one down, document search. You click on that, and this is what we refer to as the public access viewer. And depending on what you select here, you can search by a lot of different ways. But before I show you some examples of those, again, like the external access client, the public access viewer is web-based. Obviously, you're accessing it via the internet. But unlike the other two systems, the Unity client and the EAC, this one does not require any registration whatsoever. Anybody, anywhere can open this link and just start poking around. You need to have some basic information, which I'll show you here in just a second, but we tried to make this as user-friendly as possible while being as robust as possible, which is a difficult intersection to attain at times. And we've had some feedback from members of the public saying, well, can I search by this or can I search by that? And again, one of the things that we're doing is we're tweaking the system when we can, and we're also keeping track of requests that are not tweaks, requests that would be more of a programming level thing that we hope to maybe one day be able to implement as the system evolves and as we have additional funds to make those changes to the system. Some things are a 5-minute change, some things require much more work than that. So we're open to feedback. We want it, as I'm going to get into in just a second. So obviously, the most simplistic version here is you want to search by, hey, what applications have been filed, and you can do just a simple date range search. And if you click search here, there you go. I do want to point out that people should keep this in mind. This scroll bar down here at the bottom is useful because a lot of people forget that it's there. But if you scroll over, it gives you some. It can give you some different information that is not immediately available at first glance. We've had some people miss that, and I'll show you that in just a second. I'll show you a little bit more about that. One of the things I like the most is this search for docket-related documents. This is where it gets more robust. Just for example, let's say that all you know is the county. I mean, you can come in here and literally type in Weld County, leave everything else blank, leave date ranges blank, leave everything, hit search. It's going to take a minute because the more information that's out there, the longer it takes when it's pulling it in. But here you go. Here is without any sort of other search parameter on this. You have no date range, you have no docket number. All you know is you want to look at what's going on in Weld County. You can come down here and look through every single thing that's been filed. And I know I'm scrolling really quickly because there's a lot there, and it'll obviously continue to grow. But let's say that you know it's Weld County, and wait, let me change this. Let's look at Adams. Let's see what happens when we do Adams County. I'm sure the size of the little search bar over here will go down, and it did. And then let's say that you want to look for Adams County, and you want to look and see if there's anything that's been filed in Brighton, specifically within Adams County. Well, there's nothing there. So let's look at Westminster. And I'm actually just making this up as I go, so I'm not sure what results are going to come back. Okay, I'm striking out there. Let's do Weld and Greeley. Okay, so Weld and Greeley brought these things back, and then look, you've got an application here. You double click on it. One of the things I think is worth pointing out that I would suggest for users to take advantage of, especially those of you who are paying attention right now, who are attending this meeting. I hope everyone's paying attention, but attending this meeting, that you're not an oil and gas operator, you're not an attorney, you're just someone who wants to understand how to utilize this system a little better. And so far, you've just been poking around within the public access viewer. It doesn't give you the ability to see much, but you can search by documents, by areas. And let's say, for example, you did exactly what I just did. You looked in Weld County and you looked in Greeley and you saw this application and you come in here and you look at it. One of the, I was thinking about this yesterday because this is an important tool. You're looking at the application and you say to yourself, as a person who doesn't use these documents that often, there's no docket number. So if I don't have a docket, how do I find out the docket number for this application? You have to remember that when applicants initially upload an application, they don't know what their docket number is when they upload it. We assign it, and by we, I mean the e-filing system assigns the docket number. So how do you know? Well, it's right here in this bar at the top. So this tells you that it's an application up here. This tells you the docket number right here. This tells you who it was filed by, the date it was uploaded, and whether or not it's confidential. But with this docket number, you can then go back. I'm just going to copy this. With this docket number, you can then go back to this page, get rid of whatever search parameters you want to, and just put in the docket number. And then with that docket number, you can find more things. Now, nothing else came back because these are the only things that have been uploaded for this docket. But one of the things that I want to encourage people who only currently utilize the public access viewer is to think about registering as a user with the external access client. Because if you have a docket number, you can do a lot more within the external access client. You can, especially with the docket number, it's harder in that to just poke around because it's not set up that way. It's the external access client is meant to be, like I said before, for the parties to go in, start a matter, maybe petition it. Maybe that's where the litigation sort of happens between the parties. And that's where the orders will be available for review once a hearing officer does order something. And so it's just a lot more robust, and you can deal specifically with one issue that you particularly care about, one application. With a docket number that you find here, you can then go over to the external access client and find out more. So I think that's worth noting. Now, as I stated before, the current status of the system, we know that it's not perfect, but I can promise the people that are on this call that the hearings unit specifically, as well as other units within the COGCC, are working on how to improve this system almost every day. I spend more time than I'd like to admit talking to OIT, and it's not because I necessarily enjoy it, but it's because we are constantly identifying things that either need to be tweaked or revised or edited or whatever verb you want to call it, to make the system more user-friendly and to make it more functional. And so what do we need from the people on this call, in this meeting? Pay attention very closely, because this is the only time you'll ever hear me say this. We need your complaints. And we need you to contact Margaret Humecki and Angelica Amaro, who are both fantastic at what they do and are super users within this system. What does that mean? It means they have more permissions on the inside version of this system than I do, to be able to help people walk through where they're getting stuck, to help reset passwords at times. I've dealt with both of them over the last couple of days as I built this training, where I was trying to I got locked out of the system a couple times. I needed their help. Ultimately, there were internal system issues that required me to go to OIT to get help above their heads, above their level. But I'll just give you a brief example. I had a status conference in a matter a few weeks ago where the parties began having a conversation about the difficulties they had encountered with this system. And, XYZ didn't work and they couldn't figure out ABC, et cetera. And I asked them if they had let anybody know, and both parties told me no. So if we don't know that something's wrong or something's not working, we can't fix it. And that to me is probably the biggest takeaway that I have from this, that I want there to be from this meeting, is that you have to email Margaret Humecki or Angelica Amaro and tell them. I just heard somebody say something. Was that an accident? That maybe it was. Somebody's not muted, but that's okay. Please mute if you're not. So we have to know what's happening, what's not happening, what should be happening, what shouldn't be happening. You email them. If it's an urgent issue, I would say call them. Like you're up against a deadline, you're locked out of the system, something's weird, the system doesn't appear to be down, but you can't figure out what to happen. Yes, you can call somebody, but if it's something non-urgent, I would say email them and give us as much information as possible. What docket number are you working in? When did the issue happen? Was it today? Was it yesterday? Was it the last 5 days in a row? What time of day? Do you have screenshots? Can you take screenshots of what's happening? Is the system giving you specific error messages? Is it an intermittent problem? We need to know what those are, because I can't tell you guys how many times I've gone to OIT with something that I just assume other people are encountering, and they were unaware that an issue was even happening. And so I had to start a ticket. It happens a lot. We have this first year of using this system is going to probably be mostly us working the bugs out. And I know it won't always be like that, but we appreciate your patience. We appreciate your feedback. And we appreciate your help, because you guys are helping us make it better. Unless we don't know there's an issue, as I've stated more than once now. So I won't belabor that point anymore. I would just encourage everyone to take advantage of Margaret and Angelica and help us make this system better. Okay, so I want to pause here. I want to open it up to anyone who wants to unmute themselves and see if anybody has any questions about what I've specifically gone over to this point, meaning the Unity client, the external access client, and the public access viewer, and questions related to those three topics. And anybody who has anything, go ahead and chime in. Okay, not hearing anything. So we'll keep going. Give me just a second. The next thing I want to do is go over very, very briefly a, hold on just a second. Let me close out of this one. Got to get rid of that stupid Zoom thing. I'm going to show you guys very, very briefly a pooling application being filed in the external access client. Okay, so this is our test environment. This is so I can do whatever in here, and I'm not going to screw up the other workflow. Technical staff review folks who will wonder what the heck I'm doing. This is, we can upload whatever we want in here and mess around with it, but I'm going to keep it really, really basic for today. As you, I'm sure there's a lot of people on here who have already gone through this, but for those who haven't, I think that this can be a useful exercise. As I stated before, over here on the right-hand side of the screen, this is where you can do some searching, which sort of combines some of the functionality of the public access viewer and the external access client, which is what we're in right now. So if you, like I said, if you're in the public access viewer and all you find is a docket number, you can come in here and look that docket number up here as well and find the matter and see exactly what it looks like as far as what the parties have done, filing documents back and forth. And this is going to put it in a different format in terms of filing documents chronologically, et cetera. It's going to display things differently than what the public access viewer shows you, which is just a running list of documents. Again, public access viewer, all it's going to show you are the documents filed related to any docket. This will give you more functionality. So you come in here and it says hearing application form. Click here to begin over on the top left of this screen. So you do that, double click, it opens up another box. And obviously this goes without saying, everybody's used the internet before today. Anything with an asterisk is a required field. I'm going to do just as I said before, just a simple pooling application. Cause number is either a drop down or you can just start typing it in. So I'm just going to do 407 and hit enter. All right. Things that are not, oh, see, I hit enter and it gave me an error message because it's saying it thought I was trying to submit the document. So now it's showing me the required fields. I'm just going to call this ABC oil. More information that you give us, the better. Even though a lot of these fields are not required, it's very helpful to have them filled out. One of the things I'll show you in just a minute, one of the things we're actively working on changing with regard to this system, as far as one of the first requests we've got into OIT is regarding a required field. So down here, I'm just going to, even though this is not required, I'm just going to say Niobrara. I'm going to say it's a 640. We're going to come down here, county, again, we'll just say Weld. I started typing, it found it. Municipality, we'll say it's, we'll call it Greeley. And we'll say, I'm just making all this up, obviously, 6 North, 65 West, 6th Prime Meridian, and we'll say it's section 20. All right, portion of section all, because it's 640. If you had multiple application lands, you would hit this box here for add. If I do, see how I can just keep adding lines if I wanted to. Obviously, you can come back here and hit remove. All right, so here, I'm just going to put myself in. This is a required field, obviously. It's telling me. Let's see. I'm starting my own law firm as of today. And I'm not going to fill out the rest. All right, I'm skipping all this site information just because. All right, now here's where, if you do this drop down, this, you see the application has an asterisk. If I hover over it, it's harder to see, but the application has an asterisk. The interested parties list has an asterisk. Testimony does not have an asterisk, even though it's required by Rule 505 to be uploaded at the time the application is filed. That is the thing that I was referring to before when I said this is something we're actively working on trying to change with OIT. We understand that it's not currently listed as a required document. That was a mistake. It should have been changed before launch. That did not happen. As of now, we're not going to reject applications that are missing testimony when they get filed. But a perfect example, I just had a conversation with Ms. Humecki earlier this morning. We talked about this. One of the things she mentioned is as she's seeing applications come in, which admittedly right now is not a high volume, she sees that, oh, the application was filed, the interested parties was filed, but there's missing testimony. A lot of times she'll call up the firm and say, hey, you forgot to file the testimony. Oh, my mistake, I'm uploading it now. That's how we're handling it today. We're not going to do that in a few months. We're not going to do that when we're getting inundated with applications again and there's a high volume. Not to mention we'll have the testimony option highlighted with an asterisk as a required document. If something's required and it's not there at the time of filing, well, number one, the system's not going to let you proceed. But number two, even if somehow it does, we're going to kick it back and say, no, this is deficient for these reasons. Please fix it and refile. So, but for now, we're allowing that grace period, as we are with several other things like that, where we know we're missing some internal components regarding functionality. So, application, attach. I just have I have a PDF here that just says test document. Then I need to come down and select interested party list, attach. I'm going to basically attach the exact same thing, even though the system doesn't know that. It tells you the name of it, whatever you've called it here under the document name. But over here, this is what the system identifies it as, because that's the predetermined name. You can remove something if you accidentally uploaded it by mistake. You can remove it here and then fix it. This is an affirmation box saying that you do have permission to upload documents related on behalf of the applicant. We put that in there because we didn't want people creating false applications, etc. If if Joe Blow tries to upload an application on behalf of Great Western and they had no authority to do so, and they say that they did, that's going to give us the ability to just go in there and delete that docket. So everything should be good to go with this one. I'm going to hit submit. There was an error saving the form. I don't know why. Did I miss something? Maybe not. Let me see. Try it again. Oh, well, that's great. Let me see. So it I don't know why I did that, but let me, oh, the whole thing kicked me out. So anyway, now I'm getting error messages. Well, that's cool. Anyway, that should have worked. And that would have basically created a test docket in our test environment. I'm glad that's the test environment and not the production environment. But that's as simple as it is. That's walking through the uploading of an application. Sorry, it didn't work at the very end there. That was kind of annoying, but what can you do? I'm not an IT guy. So I want to pause here for a second. Does anybody have any questions about the uploading of an application or the kicking off of an application? All right, I'm not hearing any, so I will move on. All right, let me go back to our homepage here. All right, so right now I'm going to briefly address some questions that I got from the bar when I circulated an email thread a few weeks back requesting whatever kind of questions the bar had. And some of these I'm going to save until next week. So if we end up coming in a little bit short on this first training, like if we end up coming around the 45-minute mark, as far as conclusion, that's fine. Like I said, we're going to do another one next week where we go more in depth and show you exactly what the filings look like in between platforms and how technical review occurs. And we'll get into some more of the bar questions next week. And that also brings up a good point. I'm going to mention it now, and then I'll probably mention it again at the end. If there's questions that pop up, you can do it one of a couple ways. If as we're addressing the Q&A portion here, if there's questions you have that you would like to have answered that were not asked and answered here, you can either chat them to me or you can email them to me, and I will continue to add them to this running list I have. We also have some guidance documents we've been working on in the background. One of the things, that brings up something I wanted to mention. And we will upload those guidance documents to our hearings page so everyone can have them. Hearing Officer Thomas spent a lot of time working on basically a flow chart. The flow chart, I'm not going to get into it today. It will be addressed next week. We're going to do another training a week from today. The one we were talking about before, where we show you the different interaction between the platforms. The spreadsheet, the flow chart that Hearing Officer Thomas prepared it deals exclusively with the docket statuses and what those statuses mean. And it's very important that we spend a good amount of time next week talking about those, because the statuses, as you see them, when you log into the external access client and you see what status the docket is in, and it's something that helps us too. It's something that's just as important for us as well, looking at the Unity client. When we see the docket statuses, that tells you as the user, where is this docket at in terms of the workflow? The workflow is the logic that the systems use to move an application along the path. And we have spent a good amount of time trying to understand that as best we possibly can. We've talked to the developers 100 times about it, because we know that that's where a lot of the roadblocks are happening. A lot of the hurdles that are not being jumped are happening when an application gets to a certain docket status and a party doesn't necessarily know that what needs to happen and when. And so the thing about the docket statuses is that depending on what they say, for example, internal group review or applicant issue resolution or petition period, those are just 3 examples of different types of docket statuses that any particular docket can and will sit in. And depending on what that status is telling you, that requires a certain party to take action. Sometimes that party is hearing staff or hearing officers. Sometimes that party is the applicant. Sometimes that party is internal technical staff reviewing the docket. And so depending on what those statuses are, that's going to determine who needs to do what next. And so we've had instances that we found the hard way where an applicant was basically waiting around for a recommended order to occur by the hearing officer to submit it to the commission for consideration. Well, the hearing officer didn't know that that was the case because the docket status stated something like published notice. And so the applicant didn't know off the bat that that meant that they needed to actually go into the external access client and physically click on a button that moved it from published notice to the petition period, which then triggers other timers and workflows within the system. That's why I hope I'm not losing anybody. I know that we can get kind of down in the weeds pretty quickly with the functionality of this. And that's why I wanted to stay high level today with what those statuses are, how these systems work, and just to very briefly touch on the fact that there are docket statuses and that there are different docket statuses and that the different docket statuses determine that different parties do different things at different times. Next week, we will get into the weeds of that and we will say, if you, as the applicant, don't do XYZ, it's going to sit there. If you, if technical staff, as say the OGLA review, doesn't do XYZ, it's going to sit there. And so that's going to keep you guys as the people, the users of these systems, it's going to allow you to at a glance look at the docket and say, oh, it's in the petition period. I've got to wait 30 days. I'll just set myself a calendar reminder or whatever. But right now that's not happening because the docket statuses are not being utilized correctly by all parties. This is not a criticism of any one person or a type of user. This is, we are still working through moving these things amongst the correct statuses ourselves. So that being said, I want people to be aware that's what we're going to be discussing next week. I think that will be really important for support staff to be aware of. So please have them attend next week. Again, it's going to be recorded. It'll be uploaded. So if they can't attend, that's fine. But it would be very, very, very helpful to have them watch it. So as the people in your firms who use this the most, when they see something sitting in a certain status, they should know right off the bat what that means. All right. I feel like I've beaten that to death enough. So we will, as I said, get back to docket statuses next week. All right. Now, on to the questions I have so far. And I will also find a way to upload these questions and answers at some point after this meeting. So first question. With pooling testimony due at the time of filing, how will applicants identify the non-consenting or unleased interests when the 60-day election period runs after the time of filing? We assume this can be in the form of supplemental testimony. Yes. Obviously, you cannot provide us with testimony that doesn't exist at the time of filing, even though we're saying you have to provide us with information at the time of filing. So obviously, as information becomes available, as clocks run, as deadlines and timeframes run, then you become aware of exactly who is consenting or not. Then yes, you can definitely upload that as a Rule 505 supplement. All right. Next question. We are concerned with providing public notice lists at the time of application filing and do not believe it is efficient to seek confidentiality of these notice lists for every application filed. Would you consider keeping the notice lists internal? In other words, not posted to the public application portal until at least the petition deadline? The short answer here is no, because of the amount of manual work it would require on the part of the hearing staff. In other words, we'd have to be paying attention to, oh, well, has that time frame run? Do we need to go in and uncheck that box, et cetera? So I'm saying no based on what this particular question is asking. The longer answer is that the system does have the ability to mark filings confidential, but we as the hearings unit are going to utilize that option very sparingly. In other words, there should be a request for relief filed in the EAC explaining exactly why that is the case and the good cause for same. So I will also point out to the parties on this call that to please read Rule 223, which addresses confidential information specifically. Okay, let me see. Next question. Assume there is an existing / producing location with multiple horizontal wells. The operator wants to drill a few more infill wells, but the spacing order well maximum is already drilled / producing. This, of course, would require an OGDP application with another embedded application for increased density / spacing order amendment. The issue will be that as-built producing location violates the 2,000-foot surface setback requirement, so a variance request is also required. Should the variance request be prepared as a request to the director, or should it be an application for a variance also embedded in the OGDP application? The short answer is the variance should be embedded in the OGDP application. We want it to be a called out specific paragraph within the application. In other words, narrative form. As a hearing officer, and I probably speak for Mr. Thomas as well, make it clear to us. Make it clear what you're asking for. Put a header, a centered, all caps header, variance request. Underneath that, paragraph narrative form of what you're asking for and why. It's going to have to still go through technical review. That is what we envision when the variance is part of an application. In other words, part of when a variance applies to existing orders. So that's what we'd like to see. All right. Next question. Pre-application consultation. The language of 301 F3 reads, prior to an operator submitting an OGDP or Form 2A to the Commission at the request of the relevant local government or federal agency, the director will participate in a formal consultation process. If a formal consultation process is requested, is it correct to interpret 301 F3 to mean that the operator is prohibited from filing the application until after the formal consultation process has occurred? Yes, that is correct. Okay, I'm just going to take a couple more here, and then we're going to save some of these for next week. Have the Commission's information sheets under 302 E2 C D E G been published? Yes, they have. I personally, as well as a lot of other people within the agency, worked on those feverishly over the last couple months to get those done. Let me show everyone where they exist, okay, just in case you haven't found them. And I also had a request to point out, especially to the attorneys on this call, where this particular page exists. Okay, so from our home page, you go over here to Senate Bill 19-181. You click on it. You in this blue horizontal bar, you click on Mission Change Guidance. Now, the best way I can think to show you guys these are to filter by date. So if we come down here, most of these are March 9th, 2021. So you see we've got the information sheet about OGDPs, information sheet about procedural steps, information about public comments, etc. I think there's a couple more that might not have been on March 9th, but this page, we get, I want to point out this page, this Mission Change Guidance page for just a minute. We, as people who field questions from people who are on this call, feel that this page is underutilized. There's a lot of incredibly helpful, up-to-date, relevant information located on this page. I would encourage the attorneys on this call, the heavy users of our system of this agency, to utilize information found on this page. All right, I am going to answer, hold on, give me just a second. I need to highlight where I'm stopping. I want to take one more question. Let me see. Okay, this is for, give me just a second. I want to see if, is Jeff Storm on this call?
Yeah, John, I'm on the call.
Hey, Jeff. All right, this is for you, buddy. I think I have a voicemail from you about this. Reduced setbacks. Rule 401. Under the prior rules, a reduced setback outside of GWA generally meant any setback less than 600 feet, Rule 318a, and any setback less than 460 feet inside of GWA, Rule 318 big A. With Rule 318 big A now repealed and the default statewide lease line setback set at 600 feet for wells completed 2,500 feet or greater in depth, should applicants treat any setback of less than 600 feet as a reduced setback request as part of a spacing application? Yes. So, Jeff, that should take care of those voicemails. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, you're accurate. And I've been on the phone with Jane about that as well. So
Okay.
thank you, John.
You're welcome. All right. I think that that's a great place to stop. I do want to ask if anybody has any questions about what we've covered up to this point. And so I'm going to stop right there and see if anybody has any specific questions about what we've addressed.
This is Kelsey Wazelinki. I just had a
Hey,
quick
Kelsey.
question. First of all, thank you. This has been really helpful.
You're welcome.
I'm going to save one question on the status updates for next week, because I know we didn't talk about that this week. But one question just came up about the question, I think it came from Brent Chicken, that you just answered about the variance being embedded within the OGDP application.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we're seeing, there've only been a handful of OGDPs, just a couple filed. If an OGDP needs to contain spacing or a variance, do you expect those to be within that application filing, or can they be separate hearing applications?
We expect them to be within that application, Kelsey. So
Okay.
in other words, put it all in there. Give us those headers I'm talking about in the middle of the page. Spacing request, variance request, whatever it is. Make it narrative. Make it so we know what you're asking for. I don't want to open a can of worms and talk about things that, answer questions that you didn't specifically ask, but could there be a possibility that you file an OGDP that does not have a spacing application in it, but then something changes? I mean, for me personally, and I do want to throw out the caveat to everyone on this call that Mimi Larson is returning to work on April 12th. So everything I'm saying is totally subject to change in 4 days. I'm mostly kidding about that, but I would personally, as the hearing officer reviewing it, if that were the case, and then the applicant filed an amended application saying, hey, this first OGDP did not have a spacing application, and now this new one does. And obviously that's going to be a substantive change, and we're going to say, okay, no problem. Let's renotice this, and for all intents and purposes, get it re-kicked off. But that's how I look at it. I don't know if that answers your question, Kelsey.
No, that it does. It's really helpful. I think it's just a little confusing because the 500 series rules have different application types for spacing and for variances. But then the OGDP says that those have to be filed with the hearing application for the OGDP. So we were just unclear if those go within one application document or separate documents.
Yeah, and this is that disconnect between the language of the rules and the reality of the real world, and we're going to have to address the latter through some guidance. And guidance can be us having this conversation. It can be written. It can be, it can be almost any form. But yes, we would like to see spacing applications and variance requests and all of those things contained within a single application.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right,
Hi, this is Bill Zimsky. I have a question. Can you hear me?
I can, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I filed a couple of spacing applications and my client was going to follow up with OGDPs if, and we have a hearing, I think, in June on the spacing applications. If I file the OGDPs in the interim, that would be processed on a separate timeline and then I'd have a hearing on that? Or would that screw up my spacing applications timing?
That's a good question, Bill. I have not yet seen that happen. I don't want to definitively say it's going to screw up the timing. I do know that we're just now starting to process we've gotten in our first couple OGDPs, and nobody knows yet exactly what those timelines look like as far as, oh, hey, we have an average of OGDP applications working their way through the agency. So you're looking at 3 days or you're looking at 3 months. I don't know what that looks like yet. And so I have not yet encountered a scenario that you're describing. And I would like to discuss that with internal staff and I'm going to add that to my list and we can talk about it next week.
Okay, thanks. I really appreciate it.
Sure. I will send out, we're coming up against the end of our meeting, the end of our hour. I'm going to send out another invite to this group, basically the same group that I did the first time. I think I ended up adding a couple people at the very end, and same deal. Share it with whomever you like. It'll be probably the same time next Thursday, 10 a.m., unless I have something on my calendar that I have overlooked at this point. So in the meantime, email me some questions. We're going to put together the examples where we walk through and talk very, very heavily about the docket statuses and what they mean and when, et cetera. And so that's probably going to be the bulk of our presentation next week, is just working through an application from the internal and external systems perspectives. And then we will work through more questions, and we'll keep doing these once a week, or once interest starts to wane a little bit, maybe we'll do them once every 2 weeks or once a month or whatever. It's going to be up to the participants how often we conduct these. So I hope this was helpful. I appreciate everybody's attendance and questions, and I look forward to seeing you all again next week.